Starting a business can seem like a daunting task, unless you have a partner like Shopify. They have the tools you need to start and grow your business. From designing a website to marketing to selling and beyond, Shopify can help with everything you need. There's a reason millions of companies like Mattel, Heinz, and Allbirds continue to trust and use them. With Shopify on your side, turn your big business idea into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states or situations.
Media Podcast Network presents This is Protecting America. Now, here's Emmy-winning journalist Rita Cosby.
Welcome to another edition of Protecting America. I'm Rita Cosby. Well, President Trump took bold action against Iran by recently using the U.S. military to strike several of Iran's nuclear facilities. So what is next for the future of Iran? And can the resistance movement against the very oppressive regime succeed? What's next for them? Well, to talk about this and so much more is one of the great Iranian experts out there, Alireza Jafarzadeh. He is the Deputy Director of the U.S. Office of the National Council of Resistance of Iran. Alireza, it's really great to talk with you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Rita. It's always a great pleasure to be on your show and speak with you.
How important was this move, first of all, by President Trump physically to take out and at least have a huge impact on the nuclear capabilities, and also the message that it sent to the world?
Well, I think what was on display in the past 1 month or so in Iran was the absolute weakness and the vulnerability of the Iranian regime on the one side, and the willingness and commitment of the international community to hold the regime accountable for their rogue behavior in terms of their nuclear weapons program, their terrorism, their missile program, and their drone program, and also the repressive rule against the people of Iran. This is a regime that always boasted that, we control and dominate the Middle East, if not the rest of the world. We have all these proxies from, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, the Shia militias in Iraq, and, a whole host of them in the whole region. But we have these repressive forces inside the country. We are moving the nuclear program where we have these missile capabilities. All of that, yet they were not able to keep their own commanders alive. They were not able to protect their the regime and their main centers of repression or their nuclear weapons program. I think it's so important to realize that this is a regime that had heavily invested on the nuclear weapons program of the country. The nuclear weapons program has cost the regime and the people of Iran over $2 trillion. That's a lot of money. That's $2,000 billion. And yet, in a matter of days, the whole thing was up in smoke. And just to get a sense of how much money it is and how much it means to the regime, if you add up all of the oil revenue of Iran, and Iran is entirely reliant on oil revenue for its economy, a country of 90 million population, all the oil revenue in the past 46 years, according to OPEC numbers, is about $1.5 trillion. And yet they had this program, nuclear program, cost them $2 trillion. So that shows the level of emphasis and the resources the regime spends on something that is clearly not about nuclear energy. It's all about building the bomb because it's a tool for their survival. all of that is now gone. And that's why I think now it's a whole new opportunity for the whole world to deal with a much weaker regime, much more vulnerable regime, and look at the future in terms of, a free Iran, a democratic Iran, a republic form of government, an Iran that is not at war with the rest of the world.
So what do you think the U.S. should do next?
Well, I think at the end of the day, even though the regime has been, very vulnerable, they're clearly weaker now, but the regime hasn't given up its ambition on, uranium enrichment. They continue to insist on maintaining their enrichment capability, that they want to maintain all of their capabilities in terms of missile and everything, because otherwise the regime feels if they back down, then they're going to have pay the price inside Iran, and the people will be even further emboldened to bring about change. So at the end of the day, even though you need to hold the regime accountable, but you have to also look to see what the Iranian people want. Now, when it comes to accountability, there is a mechanism called the snapback at the UN Security Council that could put back all the sanctions that was previously imposed on the Iranian regime as a result of 6 UN Security Council resolutions. But those sanctions were put on pause in 2015 as a result of the Iran nuclear deal. Now, up until the next few days, if the EU3, the Europeans, in cooperation with the United States, try to snap back those sanctions, there is time to hold the regime accountable. Otherwise, that mechanism is going to expire. So that's the first step that the U.S. should work with Europeans to snap back the sanctions in the next few weeks. The second thing is that the U.S. should hold the regime accountable for all of their violations. It's not over yet. So for every violation, the regime has to pay the price. But most importantly, you want to send a very strong signal to Tehran that, the next steps are going to be a lot greater because they're vulnerable as a result of their own population, that the U.S. and the outside world are going to stand on the side of the people of Iran. There's a resolution in the House that was supported in a bipartisan way by a House majority that calls for the right of the people of Iran to overthrow the regime. It calls for standing on the side of resistance units by the main organized opposition, the MEK, which is the same movement that exposed these nuclear sites, to confront the Revolutionary Guards and, effect change in the country. There is a viable alternative to the Ayatollahs led by a woman, Mrs. Mariam Rajavi. She has tremendous support both inside the country but also outside of Iran among parliamentarians. There are 4,000 parliamentarians in Europe and the United States who've supported a 10-point platform for future Iran. And she envisages her platform is based on separation of religion and state, gender equality, freedom of religion, freedom of political parties, a free market economy, and peace in the Middle East and a non-nuclear republic form of a government. This is in line with the aspirations of the people of Iran, but also in line with what the international community like to see a non-belligerent Iran. And that's where I think the focus should be. Unfortunately, as a result of the policy of appeasement, both in Europe and the United States over the past few years, she's not as much known to the American public as she should be, given the price, the high price her movement has paid, and the platform she has, the efforts that's been done over the past 40 years. That's where Congress is trying to focus on and educate others to focus on this as well.
Hi, I'm Cyndi Lauper. My scalp was covered with psoriasis, which could lead to psoriatic arthritis. But Cosentyx treats both.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for adults with moderate to severe plaque psoriasis 300 milligram dose and adults with active psoriatic arthritis 150 milligram dose. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx.
Before starting, get checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur, like tuberculosis or other serious bacterial, fungal, or viral infections. Some were fatal. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if inflammatory bowel disease symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions and severe eczema-like skin reactions may occur.
Learn more at Cosentix.com or 1-844-COSENTIX.
Cosentix works for me.
Ask your doctor about Cosentix.
Amazon One Medical presents Painful Thoughts.
I've been on hold to make a doctor's appointment for 23 minutes now. The automated voice has told me 47 times that my call is very important to them. I'm starting to think that they don't think my call is important at all.
With Amazon One Medical 24/7 virtual care, you'll get help fast without having to remain on the line to make an appointment. Amazon One Medical. Healthcare just got less painful.
16 years from today, Greg Gerstner will finally land the perfect cannonball. Epic splash. Unsuspecting friends. A work of art only possible because Greg is already meeting all these same people at AARP volunteer and community events that keep him active and involved and help make sure his happiness lives as long as he does. That's why the younger you are, the more you need AARP. Learn more at aarp.org/local.
Life is a workout, and Smoothie King is here to help you power through. Whether you're grinding out bicep curls or muscling the couch across the living room, crushing morning miles, or sprinting through back-to-back meetings, Smoothie King has fuel to help you maximize your workouts, own your recovery, and elevate your game. Give your body the energy, protein, and power it needs with a lineup of delicious smoothies made to help you conquer your goals. Only at Smoothie King.
How extraordinary is it that sort of the leader of this sort of foremost resistance movement, it's a woman? I think about the irony of it, Alireza, when you've got, of course, the mullahs on the other side.
Well, that's a great point you raised, Rita. You know, the most destructive characteristic of the mullahs, who are the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism, is not even their terrorism. The most destructive element is their misogyny. And it's the misogyny that drives everything, that has turned the mullahs to the most dangerous element in the world, that rely on hate and destruction and terrorism. So on the other side, because this movement was so dedicated in fighting Islamic extremism, and the core of the movement is actually, they're Muslims, because 98% of the Iranian population are Muslims. But these are, her movement is actually anti-Islamist, anti-extremist Muslims. And because she was so dedicated to standing up against the regime, she rose in the ranks of the movement. She brought a whole generation of women into the leadership positions, which is unheard of, not even, in that part of the world, but probably, everywhere else, that the 9 consecutive secretaries general leaders of the main organization, MEK, they have all been women. The Parliament in Exile, which she chairs, has a majority of their members who are sitting in Parliament are women. And they're sending a very strong signal to the regime that the women whom you don't count on, you don't even consider as second-class citizens, are the ones who are actually fighting you. And you're going to be brought down by these, the wave of generation of women. And that's why the regime has been unable to eliminate them despite the repression. 30,000 political prisoners in 1988 were massacred in a matter of weeks. A vast majority of them, were members of her movement. Yet the regime could not eliminate this movement because it's so deep-rooted in the minds of people, in the hearts and minds of people. And that's why I think, you mentioned about the significance of it. This is the movement that is going to endure and it's going to continue. It's not an accident that during the uprisings in Iran, you saw the very young girls, women, getting into the street, confronting revolutionary guards. They were the ones who were the most courageous. Where did that courage come from? Well, it came from, many others in the prior generations who stood up against the mullahs. They created a culture among women in Iran that you stand up for your rights, you fight repression, you fight the Islamic extremism. That's how you survive. And that's why no matter how much the regime goes after women, it's not working. To the contrary, it's backfiring on them.
You talked about how many, sadly, were executed back in 1988. How has been the response since the U.S. strikes, and how developed is the movement now? What, in terms of their, just capabilities, but also, sadly, how oppressed have they been? Because, of course, the mullahs are worried about losing their grip.
Exactly as you said, Rita. The regime after the strikes and the conflict that's been going on, since early June, has been so paranoid because they're concerned about the revival of the uprisings in Iran. Since 2018, there have been several rounds of major uprisings in Iran engulfing all 31 provinces of the country. And every time the regime came back and suppressed them, killed people, shot them in the streets, hoping that this will go away, only for the protests to come back even wider, more focused and longer lasting. And the regime is concerned that the next round could come any minute. It could be triggered by anything. You can never guess how it's going to start. The first protest in 2018 came as a result of the rise in the price of chicken and egg. The second one in 2019 was as a result of the price of gasoline that was tripled overnight. And then in 2022, it was as a result of killing a 22-year-old girl named Mahsa Amini. So anything could happen, could trigger a revolt, an uprising. And that's why the regime is so paranoid. They started, arresting so many people. At least 15 members of the main resistance movement, the MEK, which I was describing, are now on death row. These are political prisoners who were arrested in the past few years because of their involvement in the protests, and they have sentenced them to death, approved by their own Supreme Court. And more arrests are taking place in the past few days. One of the longest enduring political prisoners of Iran, his name is Saeed Mansouri, who he was arrested 25 years ago without a single day of furlough. He was kept from one prison to the other, and just a few days ago they wanted to take him away from the main prison and send him into exile in some other unknown locations, clearly showing that this regime is really paranoid, afraid of their own political prisoners who are in their own hands. They're afraid that the kind of messaging they have, the kind of revolt they could cause, and the message they send outside of Iran, outside of the prisons. It clearly shows the state of paranoid of the regime that is afraid of its own population.
Is there a sense of the timetable? Obviously, it's very hard to tell, Alireza, but just with your expertise, are we looking at months, years, decades? What are we looking at in terms of a potential change? It seems like there's such great development and such great reach by, Miriam Rajavi and her group. And then now the Mullahs weekend, and obviously with the U.S. and the world praying that there will be change there in Iran. Obviously, I believe this is a moment. I'm sure you guys certainly believe it's a moment. How soon could potential change happen? And do you feel like we're at the cusp of it?
Well, I certainly feel very, very strongly that, first of all, this regime has never been so weak and vulnerable. It was clearly on display for the people of Iran and for the rest of the world to see. Remember, in the backdrop of that, you had those rounds of major uprisings in Iran, adding to it the weakness of the regime in the region, that they have lost pretty much all or a significant portion of their influence and their strength of their proxies in the region. The economy is in shambles. Nothing is really working for them. The value of currency has significantly depreciated over the past 1 year, and people are getting poorer, and as a result, a lot more angry on the regime because they feel all of the money and resources of a very rich country. We're not poor. Iran has the second largest oil and gas reserves combined in the world, yet 80% of the population live below the poverty line. So all of those elements are there. And then you have the organized opposition who is very committed, who's been working so hard both inside Iran and also outside of Iran. Just in 2024, the resistance units of the MEK, inspired by Mrs. Rajavi, they carried out 3,000 acts of confrontation and resistance against the IRGC, even though thousands of the members of the resistance units were arrested, but more people have joined. But I give you one example in terms of timing. Sometimes these things happen at a time that you can never guess. Look at the situation in Syria. After Assad got the help from the regime and the Russians and others pushing back the opposition for several years and controlled everything. And he seemed to be very invincible. And suddenly when the time came, within 11 days, the whole thing collapsed and Assad was gone and nothing could really hold him in power. And Assad was a big ally of Tehran, totally relying on the Iran regime. So that's a great sign that when the time comes for the dictators, nothing can really stop it. And we feel that all the elements are there for change in Iran. You have the very discontent population who don't want this regime. You have the organized force that nothing has been able to eliminate them. To the contrary, they've been empowered. And third, which is very important, is that the new element is that the outside world who used to really pursue a policy of appeasement, helping the regime, giving them money, giving them cash, giving them resources, the world has now waken up. The world is standing up to the Iranian regime. That's an important element that, combined with these factors internally, could signal a change. Now, when that would come, no one knows. But when you are a movement committed to change, you have to be on your toes all the time. You have to be always preparing yourself for taking advantage of the situation, creating opportunities, but at the same time taking advantage of the opportunities. The most important element is to have the organizational structure on the ground which exists, the commitment which exists, the leadership, the platform, the program, and willingness to pay the price. All of those elements are there. And then on the other side, when it comes to the enemy, the Iranian regime, they are so demoralized. They have lost their power. They're fighting one another. And they really don't have any hope for the future. And that's why I say, you never know when it's going to happen, but in most of the times it happens sooner than you expect.
I earned my degree online at Arizona State University. I chose to get my degree at ASU because I knew that I'd get a quality education, they were recognized for excellence, and that I would be prepared for the workforce upon graduating. To be associated with ASU, both as a student and alum, it makes me extremely proud, and having experienced the program, I know now that I'm set up for success. Learn more at asuonline.asu.edu.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, bravo to all the great heroes there of the resistance movement. It's incredible what your organization, led by a woman, I love this, has accomplished. And the world is waiting and rooting for you, too. Everybody, be sure to subscribe and share to this very powerful podcast. Alireza Jafarzadeh, thank you so much for joining us. And we are thinking of you and the good people there of Iran.
Thank you so much, Rita. I want to really commend you for your really very professional work you have done for decades, bringing news and analysis and understanding to the American public, giving them information that may not otherwise be available, and trying to shed light on, dark spots. So really kudos to you and the work you're doing.
Well, kudos to the courage of the resistance movement, and hopefully great things are right around the corner. Alireza, thank you.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure, Rita.
And everybody, I'll be back soon with another great edition of Protecting America. And of course, you can catch me every weeknight, 10 p.m. to midnight on the legendary WABC Radio. This is Rita Cosby, and thanks for all you do to protect America.